second session, and I'm going to sort of pick up where we left off. We're talking about road safety audits, safe system audits, as the very, very, very recent release of the Waka Kotahi guidelines, which people are still getting their head around what it all means. And certainly I'm getting lots of emails with questions, which some of them I can answer, some of them I'm scratching my head as well, and getting in contact with some of the Waka Kotahi people just to clarify bits and pieces. But certainly the road safety audit process within this safe system audit process is unchanged, or relatively unchanged, a bit of risk matrix changing, but we'll keep ticking along. Thank you for those that are moving their research assignment along. I'm very excited to see what comes in. Thank you also for those that have reached out for a little bit of assistance. We want to remind you that that's available to you. Shoot us an email, shoot Emma an email, give Emma a call or myself, or ask to organise a little catch up, or just, a little email saying I can't find much information on this topic, and we'll point you at some stuff. Okay, so by the end of this module, we want to go through 8. I'm going to put up here, or 13 steps of a road safety audit. I say 13 steps. That's Waka Kotahi Safe System Audit Guidelines has now 13 different steps to go through, and we're going to point you at where you can find some extra information on this. Okay, so a few little things here. Road safety audit, it is a pretty straightforward process, the audit process as a standalone. It's got 8 main steps. The safe system audit is more complex in the sense of having to do that safe system assessment up front and then the audit process, and it's got 13 steps. I'll take you through those anyway. All of this takes time, regardless of whether it's just the 8 steps of an audit or the full 13 steps of the safe system audit. But they really do add value to the project. We showed last session that benefit cost ratio somewhere, in the order of 36 to 1 for that design stage road safety audit, and less than that for an existing conditions or a post-construction, but nonetheless still a very valuable thing to do. And we really, it should be an integral part of the design process, regardless of whether it's a local road controlling authority or even others, private road operators, or the National Road Controlling Authority. It's got to be an integral part of design process. And I gave you some examples last time of things that, look on the surface to be improvements to the network, but produce risk and contribute to death and serious injury. Now, here we go. We've got a directional sign, got the city centre, the airport. I'll give a prize to somebody who can tell me anything that they see about that sign that they don't like, or that's wrong or different or the like. And I will come back to that one. I'll give you a little bit of time to ponder that. Emma, you can monitor the different ideas that come in on that.
No worries, Ken.
Okay, so here is the safe system audit process steps. And what you can see there is in the green, we've got role responsibility, we've got client, we've got safe system audit team leader, we've got the safe system audit team. And so these are all sort of defined in the new safe system audit guidelines as to what those particular roles are. I'm going to sort of go into that a bit, and I'm jumping back and forth between traditional auditing and now this beefed up safe system auditing. Generally, the process well together. But first of all, we're going to confirm that stage of audit. And that is around the stages of finished module 1, talking about concept stage, preliminary design, detailed design, post-construction. You're determining which audit stage do you want to undertake this audit. If you're doing a small job, low risk, undertaking a safe system audit at all of those stages is just overkill. Like, okay, if you had unlimited resources and the like, yeah, maybe you might do that, but it's not going to add value to the project for the risk profile that we're talking about. If you're building a new motorway or a major new cycleway through an area or the like, then certainly there you're talking about undertaking these safe system audits at all stages, where there's a concept, and then there's a preliminary, and into the details, and then once it's built and just before the ribbon's cut. So you've got to determine that. And that is the client's responsibility. The term clients used, sometimes the term sponsor is used, but it's really you can think about it as the end asset manager. Now, I don't use the term end asset owner because I think public infrastructure is owned by the community, not the agency or the council. So I would say the asset manager, okay? I'm okay, actually, if you use owner, it really doesn't worry me. But think about it in that perspective. So if a private developer is coming along to build their massive new hardware warehouse and access onto the public road network, a local controlling authority road or the like, they don't decide. They are not deciding when road safety audits or safe system audits are being undertaken for the public that intersection they're creating. It is the end asset manager, which will be the road controlling authority, the council, or if it goes onto Wakatahi Road, the national government there. And they should say, you're right, you have to do a road safety audit at detailed design stage, or at these 3 stages. So then the audit team is selected. Okay, so again, this is client / safe system audit team leader. And that's because the client will traditionally appoint a consultancy or another group, and then the team leader within that group will sort of pull a team together to undertake this audit. I mean, technically, a client could specify individuals. In practical reality, that doesn't tend to happen. But I think that would be absolutely within your power as a client to request specific individuals get involved. The brief is developed, and that's going to be the client, the designer, and others just ensuring that they clarify exactly what they want. And then some sort of commencement meeting. Now, this is going to vary case by case as to how big and elaborate it is. It may be just an email with documentation, some notes, and a phone call to, yep, you've got everything you need. And that's because, you've done lots of audits with this group, and you know their processes, they know your processes, and everything's all packaged up nicely. Or it might be an in-person sit down, put out the roll plot, or bring the plans up on screen, have a really good chat about it. Everybody gets on the same page. Then there's, of course, lots of looking at background documents, getting your head around the scope as the audit team. You know, what's the project? Why they're doing it? What have got traffic volumes? Do they have ped counts, cyclist counts? What's the speed? What's the land use? Is there any other things we can find out? So you're trying to gather context, understand information. Then you go and inspect the site. And this is a really important part about road safety auditing. Even though you're looking at a plan, a design, something that doesn't exist at the moment, okay, or changes to an area, you know, that's there, but those changes aren't physically on the ground. You can't look at them yet. You're just looking at your design. You still go to the site, and then you have your plans, and you look at your plans, and you try to imagine that built. You try to imagine, how does it tie into the existing area? You know, how are the users using this area now, and what are they going to do when this new facility is built? How are they going to get from A to B? How are people going to see this new facility when they're approaching? Commonly, as a road safety auditor, we have the team there, and the team could be just 2 of us, or it could be, you know, more, but we'll drive through. We'll drive through the existing conditions multiple times, usually dash cam it as well, and be just looking and getting a feel for the surrounding environment, the speeds you approach, the sight distances on the approach, and these sorts of things, and imagining, you know, where things would be under the new plans. Then stop and then walk the area as a, you know, pedestrian. Obviously, if it's a motorway or something like that, you certainly don't do that unless you're putting in place appropriate traffic control and safety measures. But certainly most of the sites you're able to walk around, get a feel for it like that. You may decide to ride a bike through it if it's a popular bike area, maybe, maybe not, but you get that good feel for what's there in the existing conditions, how does it operate, and then have a real feel for imagining the future when your new facility is built and how it might be used. And then you do that at night as well. I'll talk to you a little bit more about a number of these points shortly. This is a really interesting one, and this is real New Zealand uniqueness. They've put in a debrief meeting before the report writing. This is one where I had to chat to some people, and I said, have you got the order right? Why are we debriefing before the end of the whole process? But the answer is, it is correct, or in the thinking. And it's to talk about, these are the issues we've identified. This is how we're going to write it up, and some recommendations. Do you have any additional information or comments around this? And you're talking to the client, the designer, which can help the report come out in a more meaningful way and a more helpful way. So it's pretty much, you as an auditor and an audit team, you're kind of done, but you just haven't finalized your report and maybe written it up exactly the way you want. So then there's that debrief discussion, and that's an interesting one. And I'm going to be keen for feedback from people in practical reality, because that's not something that I've ever partaken in my 20+ years of road safety auditing. We simply, you know, after commencement meeting, we might seek some clarification on things, you know, throughout the process, but certainly haven't gone to the point of having that discussion around what we're going to find and produce and the like. So anyway, so then you write it all up, and I'm going to point you at templates and things, so you're not, you know, flying in the dark there. You've got some really tangible things to work with, consistency across all of New Zealand. And then that's handed over. And this is where we get into the point where the designer receives that report and responds to all of your findings and recommendations. And by responding, I mean that they can say, I disagree with you. Now, under this process, we'd hope that would actually happen back here in debrief. Or I kind of think the term debrief is, it's pre-brief, or I don't know. It's anyway, it's fun. So you kind of think that debate and discussion would have happened back there, but nonetheless, the designer is absolutely within their right to say, yeah, thank you for your audit report. We disagree with it, or we disagree with these findings. We do not agree there are safety issues, or we do not agree with your risk rating, or we do not agree with the way you've recommended for this to be rectified. And that is absolutely within their power, within their remit. They are allowed to do that. But if they're going to do that, they really want to justify that and explain why it is. Then this is where the safety engineer or somebody with a bit more, so ideally internally, somebody who has that experience and knowledge gets involved. And they are sort of responding to the designer's comments in the report. So that road safety engineer is client side. And client makes then ultimate decisions. So that might be a project manager. And then the final report is all completed, packaged up, and we implement any changes. So there you go. It's quite a process to follow, and it makes sense. A lot of it makes good sense if you've got a meaty project. If you're doing very minor works, I mean, that's a fair bit of stuff to do if you're doing very minor works, and it may be elected not to. I'll talk in our final module of this course about local controlling authorities, processes and practices, which I think there's some simple stuff that can be done to get some consistency around when audits are done and the like, but we'll get to that. So I'll jump through a few of these just for a little bit more information, and then we'll take questions on it. So the audit team, and in road safety auditing around the world, it's always talked about as teams, and you need somebody to lead this team. Now, Waka Kotahi has in their guidance said 10 years for the person leading it, 10 years experience. So it's pretty big. And then you've got auditors and observers or trainees, and they're people learning the process, or maybe external, not external to the organization. You can definitely pull others in, but maybe they're providing specialist advice on some particular aspect like barriers or something like that. Or they're the principal of the local school or the local police officer or something. You may just pop them in as an observer. They're not a road safety auditor. They haven't done the course. They're not qualified, but they're providing you some insights and some value. Yeah, so I think we talked about who's responsible for doing that, and the new Waka Kotahi guidelines has laid that out pretty well. Yeah, almost always ensure a team is used, and yeah, it's pretty well clarified that they want a team being more than one. Independence we talked about, and there's a bit more clarity on independence. The Waka Kotahi guidelines now go to the point of specifying that they're haven't quite absolutely, said must in, standards and guidelines is your strong word, but they've gone very close to that. I think with should, which is the next level down in words, they should be from a separate organization. So that was always a point of interest. If you have multinational organization, or you have that consultancy that has offices in Christchurch, Wellington, and Auckland, and I don't know, somewhere else, New Plymouth. Can the Auckland auditors audit the Wellington designers' jobs? And I can argue both sides of that one. I can say, yeah, they're independent. They weren't involved in the design. They're not, project manager. They have professional integrity and an ability to do that. I can also argue the other side and say, yeah, but they're the same consultancy, and the pressures of a project and the time and the costs and the impact on their end client, and so the director that looks after all of this may be getting pressured to that new $1 billion cycleway is running behind time, and we can't have anything to hold this up, and then there may be influence that audit team doesn't go as strongly, or doesn't provide recommendations as free from any constraints as they possibly could. So, I can argue both sides, as I say. It's pretty clear cut and pretty obvious if it's a completely separate organization that undertakes the audit, and that's obviously what Okatahi is pushing for. Now, for local controlling authorities, it's kind of starts to get to be an interestingly different point. I still think independent organizations is a good thing, but generally it's seen as a little bit less specific in terms of making sure that they are not part of the local government or the like. Anyway, I'm happy to talk to people about individual circumstances on that if you've got particular things in mind. And we talked about that 10 years for the lead of the team.
On that, Ken, the 10 years experience, the questions come in. Is the 10 years experience required for the team leader based on road safety audit experience only, or total engineering experience? Yeah,
it's a good question. From my memory of the exact wording, it was audit and safe system engineering style experience. But what I'll do is in our 5-minute break, I'll bring up the actual guide and just check that. Just write myself a note. So, I mean, I think there's going to have to be some leniency on that, depending on the pool available. There are certainly a lot of road safety auditors out there in New Zealand with significant experience, but and a lot of them have safe system experience as well. But yeah, I think there will be some leniency and variability with this as things track along. Don't worry, I'm coming back to that roundabout sign. I know people are on the edge of their seat, and I think we might have got some things come in. It'll come up shortly. In an ideal world, like utopian world, you would have this audit team that has this broad road safety experience in different road safety areas, human factors, engineering, vehicle specifics, and the whole lot. You'd have this mix of professions and different ages and different, people who have specific lenses on different road users. You'd have males, females, others. You'd have this very broad mix, right? Because you want different views, different insights, different perspectives. The reality of it is that it's very hard to do this and pull this together, okay? You're often constrained by time and they need their audit, and you've got particular resources, and then you've got organizational policies around OH&S and getting others involved in stuff, and it's a messy thing sometimes. But if you can think about that and keep that in mind, that would be a good thing. It's good. Here's a audit team I was pulling together at one point, which was the three of us and we all are about the same age, male, all road safety engineers / traffic engineers that grew up in road authorities, state road authorities, actually. That's how we all know each other. So we look at the roads kind of the same, like, So we said we really not got much diversity in this audit team. So we got Wendy to come in. Wendy's a bit older than us, female. She's a passionate scooter rider, and she provided that very different lens on this whole thing. Not an engineer, not from a technical background. So it was a really different and interesting take on it. We did have the luxury of time and budget to be able to do this. So there you go. So you're looking at those documents, really, those detailed design road safety audits can just be a very time-consuming exercise. I mean, 500 A3 pages to work through, all the long sections, all the cross sections. That's a possibility. You can have that many, that much stuff to work through. Long sections, cross sections, drainage plans, lighting plans, signs, lines, signal phasing, of multiple intersections, just cross section after cross section after cross section, and long section, and it can be a huge amount of time boring through these documents. Inspect the site daytime and nighttime. And why do we do daytime and nighttime? For a variety of reasons. One is, some obvious things. Like here we can see, okay, North Croydon, no worries, there it is. Oh, we don't know where that is now. So, sometimes you see things like that with the existing road environment, and maybe that's going to stay in the future scenario. But also sometimes things, as you're looking at a plan and you say, oh, we're going to realign that road, it's going to go that way. And the cars on that other road, their headlights are going to be glaring straight into the approaching traffic there. So that'll be interesting. Or maybe you're there and you go back at night and discover it's actually quite a party district, and nightclubs. You thought they were just warehouses. Well, they're actually nightclubs, and there's all sorts of intoxicated people around, or these sorts of things. So lots of stuff can come out of it. Street lights that give visual deceit. Now, in reality, for me, I reckon it's 1 in 10 audits, something pops out at night that I really didn't expect when I got there in the day with the team and we looked around. So, a lot of the time you're out there and you don't really get anything new, but that one time you do, it's important that you have been there at night. Right, Emma, what did we say?
Got lots of really great answers, Ken. So a couple of things, I think. We've got the signs backwards, both pointing to SH1. The break in the circle is in the wrong place, or the roundabout break is in the wrong location. And this one is the incorrect layout, which directs motorists to go the wrong way around the roundabout.
Well, this is very, very good stuff here. I'm going to give the prize to the first person that talked about the brake in the wrong place. Now, I think some of the others sort of pop down brief, sort of wrong direction-y style things. I need a little more clarity than that. So this is the balance on putting your comments in, isn't it? You got to be the first and quick, but you got to give us enough to really clarify the issue. And I mean, so Emma, I'll let you work out who that was. I think it might have been someone, but I'll let you.
I think it was Sean, actually.
Yeah.
There's also, I was just going to say, there's just a comment on NZ traffic control devices rules doesn't allow for 2 background colors on a map style sign. Wow.
Okay. Give the prize to that person for in-depth knowledge of that. I do not know that. I would have to look that up myself, but I like the confidence in which it was said. And that's an interesting one, both the State Highway 1. I reckon that is right. You get to it in two ways, but that's an interesting one. No. Okay. The one I was looking for and was that, and there's a little fun bit of, road engineering trivia or traffic engineering trivia for you. Do we have brakes in roundabout directional signs? Well, we do. And why are they there? Well, they're there to give a subtle clue to an approaching driver as to which way we navigate around a roundabout. They're correct ones. Now, that's an interesting one. I'd like to know, it'd be interesting. I think some of you are probably going, oh, I don't think I've ever noticed that little brake. And you've probably driven past 10,000 of these in your time, and you've never sort of had that. There's a lot of subtlety in the road environment which encourages us to do particular things that it's very hard for a driver to ever clarify or pick up or the like. So, there's stuff that sometimes makes a big difference, sometimes doesn't. A bit more random engineering trivia, and just because I can see it here, is you always point your airplane at the airport. Anyway, that's so if the airport's straight ahead, that way. But if the airport was down this road, you'd have your plane pointing that way. Anyway, that is completely useless knowledge for you. Or maybe it's not if you're doing sign design. Is it a road safety? Is that one a road safety issue? Well, probably not. Is this one, getting that correct, a road safety issue? Well, I don't know. I mean, are we really going to have people going the wrong way around the roundabout because we put the brake in the wrong way? But maybe, I don't know, tell me, and I'll give a prize for this one, in what sort of scenario, situation, context, would there be a little bit more risk by getting your gap in the wrong spot? Any ideas? Where do we think that might be a little bit more of a risk? Okay. So Luke's come in there with on a motorway on-ramp or off-ramp. I actually like that for a different reason. I mean, that's got good understanding of risk around volume, speeds, and the like. It wasn't quite what I was looking for, but I do like that thinking. So I'm going to give Luke a prize but then George has come in here right next to an airport. Okay. And then Adam sort of followed that up also with foreign drivers and the like. So let's give a few prizes out there, Emma. The one that I was sort of looking for was the context around people who are unfamiliar with an area or may see things differently. And this is straight out of Hobart International Airport. You get your rental car. This is the first intersection that you hit. And, if you had a driver from maybe a country that drives on the right-hand side of the road that really doesn't have roundabouts like America, and they're to approach this odd thing, the risk goes up a little bit. I'm still not going to rate this as some, major, we'll have death and serious injury every day as a result of this type thing. But the risk in this context goes up. And that's all I really wanted to, hammer home. Plus, I like the fact that you now won't be able to drive past a roundabout directional sign without looking for a gap. But we have to think about risks within the context of the environment, the users, and the like. Okay, so when you go then to write up your audit report, Okay, you simply can use the Waka Kotahi Word document template. And there it is, okay? You get that off Waka Kotahi website. We will put that into the learning management system so you can just grab it, but it will ensure that you tick off the different headings that are required. So that makes life easy. But I do want to clarify, I'll use this one just to talk about a couple of things that are, I think are really important. So this one, and you do in the template sort of get moved into this. The information that was provided to you, and I'm talking here the design or plan number, version, date. Why is that important? Well, when you're in court defending your road safety audit because there's been an incident and you were the auditor on this new project or this project that happened, you want to be very clear as to what you looked at, okay, because it might be different to what was built. And you say, well, yeah, thank you. I think, you know, I looked at this and that was not in the plan that we audited. So that's why it's quite important. I think that's the main one I wanted to talk about out of that one. In terms of when that report's handed over, I mentioned that you don't necessarily, as a designer, a client, the receiver of the audit report, need to accept all these recommendations and the like. But what the Waka Kotahi guidelines do is when a risk has come out, so it could be a serious risk, a significant risk, moderate risk, minor risk from your risk matrix, they have these suggested actions. And so serious safety concerns that must be, there's the word, must be addressed and require changes to avoid serious injury. Significant, should be addressed. Moderate concerns, it should be addressed to improve safety, and minor concerns that could. So there's actually a beautiful hierarchy of words in guidelines, really. Must, should, could. And yeah, so that report's handed over, people keep their file copies. I do, yeah, I mean, that's good practice all around. If you're doing any, reporting of anything, that you keep your own file copies so you can go back and look at that. This dot points around, okay, you've got an audit done. If that audit sits in a drawer and never gets looked at, you've ticked a box, oh, we did an audit, but you didn't actually look at it, respond to it, action things. There's no point doing it in the start. You're not actually achieving what is required there. You can jump through that, I think. And I think I've talked a little bit about this. Well, two things. When you make those audit responses as a project manager, the person that's received the audit, those documents can become public. They have become public, and that the public document will be the audit findings and the responses. So think about how you write those up. It's good practice to give all of that back to the audit team as well. And in fact, I think in the Waka Kotahi guidelines, it's now sort of mandated that the end product is handed to all parties. And I've mentioned this once, but I'm going to hammer this home. If you're the project manager, the client, the receiver of the report, right? It's a thing that's been done to help your project reduce risk. It is your project, all right? And you decide what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. The audit team is providing you advice. You decide. Just bear in mind, though, that these are people who have looked at it from a specific safety perspective, and you should be considering that seriously. Okay. Now, Emma, I'm going to stop sharing there and I'm going to swap over my slides, get us a little bit into some pedestrian stuff. But at this point, I will take any questions that we have.
Sure. There's nothing's come through.
Okay.
If anyone wants to pop anything in the chat, we can certainly answer those for you.
Okay, well, I'll just get my next one up. So we will have our break, halftime break shortly.
One's come through, Ken.
Oh, yeah.
For designers' response to RSA findings, how brief is construed as a brief response?
Well, it's to a degree, it's up to you. So there's a very non-committal answer. The thing is, I like to think about it when I'm responding to audits as okay, I've got to defend myself in court. Is this going to have enough? So if you are accepting the audit finding and you say, yep, no, okay, that's, yes, accept it, we're going to do what you've suggested. Well, you don't need to say anything more than that, do you? If you're going to deny it and say, well, no, we're not going to do that, or we disagree with it, this is where you're really going to start to want to get into some decent explanation as to why you might have another independent judgment that's come in, or you may have sought expert advice from others, or you may have decided, based on other factors, and you want to really document that and justify your reasoning for not going down that approach. So, yes, brief, but you really cover yourself in that sense.
Great. A few questions have come through now, Ken.
Good.
So that's great. If the project manager is responsible for the decision and they are passed on after completion to assess owner.
The asset owner.
The asset owner is the owner. Then responsible for the decision in court. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll talk about a bit of legal liability stuff in the final module. If the asset owner or end asset manager accepts auditor's findings and recommendations, I think both parties are in the seat together at that stage. If the end asset manager rejects the audit finding and goes about things their own way or doesn't do anything about it, I think that's going to be back with the asset owner. But in the end of the day, my time, spending a lot of time with auditing and the like, all the legal cases come back to having a go at the road controlling authority because they got more money. Like they got deeper pockets, and that's who the legal fraternity are going at. The road controlling authority sometimes pull the audit team in as part of the case, and the only exception to that would be traffic management, road construction site audit processes and practices where it's quite a bit of company, the traffic management company and workers from the company, and it all gets messy in that legal sense.
going to come back to this one from Bruce and make that the last one. Is out of project scope a valid design response to a safety audit item?
Yes and no. So the Fergus Tate's going to come on and talk about, if he doesn't answer, what's within scope and what's not, but really you've got to think about what has this project influenced. So if you, are 500 meters down the road and you see, an issue, is that project influencing that issue? And, sometimes it does. Sometimes, you've got a curve 500 meters down the road and you've straightened out a bit of road that 500 meters back, which means the vehicle's going faster and then they're going to hit that curve and they're going to be going much faster. You're influencing that, right? That's not out of scope, even though it's out of the limits of work as in particular, right? But that's not acceptable. But if you're 500 meters down the road and there's a pothole or something, and that's, put in to the audit report for something that's completely away from it, I mean, that is out of scope. Like, that's completely out of scope. Now, any road authority or road controlling authority officer or the like with any salt is going to report that to their asset team and say, hey, got this audit done. They've told me about a pothole, which is completely out of the scope of my project, but can you just log that in your system, right? But it is out of scope for the audit. That's not what's been done. And occasionally we do see that. So again, is the project going to influence it? And then just think about it as a common sense professional. Somebody's identified a deficiency in our road network. I better tell somebody about that. Okay. Now, as an auditor, you can help out here. Clearly link it to the project if it's outside of the limits of the work, right? So they can make that direct line. But secondly, if there are things that you see as you're going to the site or, around the site and you go, well, this doesn't actually apply, but hey, I actually think this is a pretty bad issue. Write a separate email, a separate note, okay? Don't merge it into your audit. Okay.
A few more. There's a comment on that from Adam. The most common example is at intersection improvements and pedestrian cyclist facilities not specifically included within the project scope. That's just an additional comment.
Yeah, and that is definitely within project scope. So, okay, the scope of works don't have pedestrian facilities. You as an auditor identify, this is pedestrian desire line. There's a lot of pedestrians in this area. You build something, it's got no safe pedestrian crossing. You put it in your audit report, right? And it really does not count to say out of scope, okay? They're going to have to say more than that. Decision has been made, while it's been recognised, we're going to try and divert pedestrians down this way, or we're reducing the speed limit in the area, or that's been scheduled for investment in the next round of funding. Whatever it is, there's reasons maybe. I don't agree with some of the reasons often, but at least there's transparency in that decision making.
Great. There's just a couple more we'll get through quickly. What is your view on the RCA putting the onus on the developer or developers traffic engineer to advise what RSAs will be completed and at what stage? Yeah.
Well, I mean, they'll say the absolute minimum possible. As well, why wouldn't they? Like, the developer doesn't want to spend money. The traffic engineer will believe that they have, reviewed and looked at things, and so they'll pick up issues. They're not going to do it. They want continued work from that developer. It's you're handing the you're handing the keys of the lolly shop to the kids, or I don't know, I forget what they're saying. It's like the decision needs to be made from the end asset manager, who's going to be living with all of the issues for the next 50, 100 years of that poorly designed new intersection or road. So yeah, they've got to be the ones to mandate that. And you should do it in your planning approval and just dictate, no, you need audits at these stages. They need to be independent. And you can respond to them as designers, but we as end asset managers, the road controlling authority, will do the final check and say whether we agree with your responses. And I'll give you a policy template for a road control authority to, say how this could work.
Great. Thanks, Ken. And is there a legal required number of years experience for a safety engineer to be able to comment on an RSA? No, it'll be whoever the road controlling authority or the end asset manager elects to be that final person to have a say. So yeah. Okay. There's one last one which you may answer at a later stage because it might be one to think about. What's been the most challenging audit you've undertaken and why?
Oh, what a great question. I've done some absolutely fascinating ones. They often involve new technologies. Freeway to freeway ramp metering was pretty challenging. So this is putting traffic signals between 200km/h motorways where you have the ramp. So they wanted to be able to meter traffic. And so you've got your just stock standard, sight lines to the signals, speeds, number of lanes, stand-up lane, you're battling all that through. The bit that really sort of boggled my mind was when the whole thing switches on. What does that first vehicle do? How does that interaction play out? So that was pretty interesting. Anybody who's come to Melbourne before and driven through our sound tube on the CityLink motorway through, it's got all these LED lights. So the installation of those lights and the impact that would have, that was a pretty interesting one. Did one on intersections in the ACT with a particular focus on the people who wash windscreens and collect money and the dangers associated with them. And particularly with the adding light rail and how that's going to interact and the issues associated with that. So that was pretty interesting. There are a few off the top of my head, but I think of others. Okay, I'm going to jump into some stuff on pedestrians, and this is a fun topic, and a topic I think I used to say was, very forgotten in road safety, but I don't actually feel that as much anymore. Now, maybe it's because I spend so you probably see my desktop now. It's probably because I spend a lot of my life with people who are very pedestrian focused, and we're doing a lot of pedestrian work. And are you seeing the slides now?
Yes, I am.
Great.
They look great.
Yeah, so there's a lot more focus. I'm really enjoying New Zealand's sort of increased focus around pedestrian safety, accessibility, equity, and so I think a lot of you will be very focused on this space. But part of an Austroads compliant road safety audit course, which is what you're undertaking in order to get that recognition across different states of Australia and within New Zealand as well, we need to look at some of the needs of particular road users, pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, heavy vehicles, and passenger vehicles, of course, which we've been sort of looking at a bit. So we go through this. We're not going to cover everything, but it's going to give you, switch some light bulbs on around a few things in pedestrian safety. But I do welcome your input and your ideas and your thoughts. And so we're going to look at requirements of pedestrians for safe travel. We're going to look at some technical information. And then I'm going to spend a fair bit of time common road safety audit issues. And I will use case studies of coronial investigations that I've been involved in. Not again, because not that a road safety audit is that coronial investigation or, fatal investigation or crash investigation, but again, just learning what are the characteristics of the road environment that might have contributed to that. So when we see a design, an upgrade to a road, how can we prevent that? And we'll look at pedestrian terminology. And as I said, we're very close to our stretch break, but let's just cover off the 4 groups of pedestrians at greatest risk. Put it into the chat. I've got 4 prizes to give out. Well, Emma's got 4 prizes to give out. What are our 4 groups of pedestrians or, categories of pedestrians that are at greatest risk? Okay, elderly, children. So there's 2. Disabled, I'll take that. Kind of links with mobility impaired, but disabled as the broader category is right. And intoxicated. I think we covered them all. So elderly, young, disabled, and intoxicated. Let's put in there intoxicated children. Okay.
Goodness.
I haven't seen that in the stats, but so this is really interesting, and it helps you again contextualize and understand, what is the risk rating you're going to give to a particular issue in the particular context. Okay, elderly have a slower cognitive processing ability. They do not move quickly in the ability to, pick gaps and move through. They are more frail, so much more minor incidents result in death and serious injury. They have significant ability doing head checks, and like there's some key factors to consider. The young, on the other hand, are, as you know, super nimble and quick, but they're small and they get hidden behind objects, cars, bins, and the like, and they dart out, okay? They actually are far more tolerant to physical force than certainly the elderly and most others as well. Kids bounce, right? They really do. They can take a hell of a lot of force, right? However, the height of a kid becomes a really problematic thing for collision with vehicle. And the spots on the vehicle that then heads of kids hit are some of the hardest parts of the front of the vehicle, and you lose a lot of your vehicle absorption techniques for pedestrian crashes, such as pop-up bonnets and bonnet airbags and the like. So what we see is an ability to take a bit more force, but much more force being imparted. So they're at risk definitely from the likelihood of crash, darting out, chasing things, no ability to process cognitively what's going on, gaps, risk, and that height of injury. Disabled is a really fascinating one in terms of the raw numbers of people who identify with a disability that are involved in death or serious injury is actually, it's quite low. But if you then overlay that with as a vehicle kilometers traveled or pedestrian kilometers traveled, they are overrepresented. Okay, and this is because of things like an inability to see different risks, being stuck, having to ride their mobility device or in their wheelchair on the road because they haven't had an ability to get off the road with good curb ramps and the like. crossing at undesirable locations, and the like. This is far and away the biggest source of death and serious injury in New Zealand for pedestrians. Like, just leagues ahead of it. Yeah, okay, overlaps with a few a little bit, but absolute, like, huge numbers of intoxicated pedestrians being killed and seriously injured. Now, there's a societal issue potentially there, but the reality is, as a road safety auditor, is that you've got to take this into account and say, well, you know, lots of pubs, lots of nightclubs, lots of areas people drink. You can't just say, well, they shouldn't walk on the road or stagger on the road or follow whatever they do. No, you have to say, okay, what can we do to this road environment to lessen that risk? That's our role. On that note, time to get a drink. Well, at least a water or a coffee. I'm going to give you 4 minutes and then we'll get back into it. Pop any questions you got in the break, but have a stretch. We'll get back into it in 4 minutes. Okay, so I said I'd have a quick look here, and so team leader for a safe system audit, strong understanding of safe system principles, up-to-date professional experience and knowledge, current research. Okay, experience in road design, road construction, traffic engineering field, typically 10 years minimum. Okay, so they've gone with typically, so you can, you know, potentially, you know, adjust that a little bit. More complicated project should have significantly more experience. Yeah, okay. And then other regions in New Zealand or countries can also benefit. Additional skills include management and reporting skills, wide range of safe system steering, engineering experience, participation as a team member in formal safe system audits, at least 5 formal safe system audits, including at least 3 at the same stage of audit. Well, that's going to be impossible because they're new, so that'll have to build over time. But again, you've got, you know, additional skills there. So hopefully that helps clarify that requirement. So yeah, I mean, the 10 years, as I say, it says typically, so you could, you know, if you're close to that, that's fine. And that is really around these fields as the specifics, but then they want to see a bit more of that as well. Happy to take other questions and clarifications around that sort of stuff.
Sure, there's a question that came through. Now I've just got to find it. I went back too far. When we were discussing vulnerable road users, has mobility become universally applied to engineering works in Australian jurisdictions? Is there this aspect factored into audits?
Yeah, it's a good question. I will talk to that a little bit. So there's a Disability Discrimination Act in Australia. New Zealand doesn't have that specific thing, but you've got some guidance and some directions around that. And I'll talk how a road safety auditor links into that, and what I suppose theoretically is to be done and what in practice is done. But if we get to the end of this and I haven't clarified that enough, please pop it back in the chat.
And I will just mention, a couple of people have mentioned that they're having connection issues and sound issues. But then someone's commented that they're not having the same issue. So it might be just sort of localized to individuals or servers and things like that. If you need to reboot or anything like that during the session, we are recording it, so you'll be able to go back and go over whatever you've missed.
But your sound's been fine, Emma?
My sound's been perfect the whole time.
Okay, so it's probably not my end then.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, if others have experienced issues, please let us know. Yeah, you've got the recording, and yeah, hopefully, if you log out and you log back in, things often fix themselves. So back to pedestrians there. We've got 3 strategies for pedestrians. These basic principles: segregation, separation, or integration. Either completely separate pedestrians from vehicles, give them their own space. So that's segregation. Give them their own area completely. Separation is in time or in space and usually within the same envelope. Integration is where you put it all together in the same spot. So let's have a quick look. I mean, basic 101 of segregation are your motorways, which should not have pedestrians. Now, the reality is, if you look at death and serious injury on motorways, pedestrians actually appear quite a bit. But that's pedestrians who have got out of their vehicles, changing tyres. People getting out of taxis at 2 a.m. is quite a trauma representation and doing all sorts of weird things. So you do need to factor that in, but the theory is that you don't have pedestrians in these areas. And then, of course, areas that, well, are roads or used to be roads at some point, but they are now completely pedestrianised, malls and the like, your other end. I'll give a prize. First person to tell me where that is. Daryl's on the board. Oh, everybody's on it. Just, oh, Daryl's quick. No connection issues there for Daryl. It squids down. Yeah. Okay, so then separation in time is really just where you provide things like signals or others where, same bit of road, vehicle at one point, pedestrian at another point. And, sometimes we configure those in different ways. What's the name of this type of crossing where people can cross in all directions? David's on the board. Prize for David. Emma, I hope you're keeping up with the prizes. It's Barnes dance. New Zealanders are very good at that. I dare say they best in the world at knowing what a Barnes dance is. I asked that in Queensland running the course the other day. Complete silence. Nobody had a clue. There's a little snippet if you want to know about how they perform from a safety perspective. Download the PDF, click on that, and then we'll get some information. Generally pretty well. Separation in space, footpaths, refuge islands, you're giving that little bit of extra space for pedestrians. Very little, very specific, and in fact, probably one of your research assignments, so I'm giving away a little help here. Danish offset crossing, it's a minor thing, but these are things you'd expect auditors to pick up. You get pedestrians to cross so they go into the road and then they walk along and then they cross. But that's the wrong way because pedestrians are facing away from traffic as they cross. This is correct because you walk in, you have a look at that vehicle, turn, look at that vehicle, and same coming the other way. You're looking at the vehicle you're about to cross, so you can make that eye contact. So the width of a pedestrian crossing and what width? Well, you can look at standards and guidelines and the like, and they've got some widths. But what I like to just do is a simple, basic thought of if you've got a father or a mother pushing a pram, don't make one of them choose, or don't make them choose, do they put their kid in live traffic, or do they have to stand in live traffic? Or maybe a bike, or maybe a mobility scooter, you know, they're the common sort of sense things if you're providing a pedestrian refuge, but you do have some standards and guidelines available to get some specifics around that. Pedestrian overpasses, people think can be, you know, and they go, oh, well, that's the ultimate. We've done the perfect pedestrian safety. Well, our job as road safety auditors is to be real and understand how these things will actually be used. Now, I'll be honest, in this area, I don't use that pedestrian overpass. I just walk across the road, all right? And I dare say that I'm quite a safety conscious person, but it's just a long way to go. Like, why would I walk all the way up that ramp, 2 bits over there, down here, and all the way back? Okay. I'm not saying it's a bad investment. I mean, kids, old people may elect to use that, but just be aware that intoxicated people and other people are highly unlikely to use these facilities you provide. So it doesn't render the area free of pedestrian risk. Design of it is important. You know, the better you can design it, the better it integrates in with, you know, stations or spots, you know, the better. But just be aware of that. And shared zones. So this is the integration. This is where we're mixing vehicles and traffic. Now, there is some guidance available that says what a good shared zone is designed like. Okay, and it's got some principles for shared zone design. If somebody can sort of sum that up into one statement nicely, I'll give a prize. So I see safe, obvious, and step-free, which is a Bridget Doran special there, SOS. I'll give a prize for that. It's not what I was quite looking for. It's pretty good though. Safe, obvious, and step-free. Co-design, that might be a way you arrive at this. Pedestrians prioritize, sometimes a car, slow, plenty of space for all. These are good answers. Road rage every day. Yeah, I haven't quite got one in the exact way I'd like, or close to it. Yeah, so Han's getting a little bit closer. Well, what I'm looking for is you make it, this is from the design of it, you make it not look like a road. It should very much not look like a road. And you should take out any feature that makes it look like a road, be that a line marking, center lines, the color of the pavement, curbing, anything that's road feature like, get it out of there. Because pedestrians have legal priority through this whole area. It's like a massive, you know, pedestrian crossing. And cars should be the odd ones out. And a really good shared zone is if you drive into it, you go, am I actually even allowed to drive here? Okay, that's a really good win. Yeah, so I think this one in Hamilton's pretty good actually. It had some really nice features to me that really resonate as good shared zone practice. Okay. As a road safety auditor, a few things, just some common things that pop up. Sight distance of pedestrian crossing. Gee, I'm having some fun doing this in our raised pedestrian crossing course, and unpacking all of the different sight distance calculations and requirements and practices across Australia and New Zealand. But thinking about vegetation, so you may, as an auditor, see the design and want to look at the landscaping plan and want to see what's going to be planted, thinking about it in a few years when that grows up. But also there's buildings, or there could be other bits and pieces that that block sight lines to a pedestrian priority. Also in slip lanes, you're in a vehicle here, you're looking out this way, aren't you? Because you want to know whether you can put the foot down and go. And the pedestrian crossing out here. So that's a bit of a double whammy there. You're not, or a driver is not looking at the point of conflict, and the pedestrian has priority. So thinking about the swept path of larger vehicles and tracking over pedestrian areas where pedestrians will be storing and congregating. So this one looks okay. You can see the buses coming sort of close, but we certainly have seen incidents of pedestrians killed, like multiple pedestrians, where relatively new intersections and larger vehicles making their turn, and they sweep over, and the pedestrians are caught in that mix. So the design not catering for that larger vehicle. Sometimes you also need to think about what's not there. Okay, so here you've got a road. It's they're doing some upgrades to the road to make it a heavy vehicle bypass route of a town. And it's what's not there. Well, what's not there are pedestrian facilities at all. No footpaths, no crossing points, anything like that. So you as an auditor might make that call. And similarly here. Oh, hang on. Is there a break in this roundabout? Yep, we've got a good, just, there you go. You can't see them without. And you think about these areas, okay, it looks fine now to walk on the grass, very lovely. Think about it when it's muddy, when it's wet. If somebody was pushing a pram in a mobility device, they'd have to be on the road. There's no other option. And, with a crest like that at a reasonably high-speed road, it's quite a dangerous scenario. So, pedestrians have this thing called a desire line. And what a desire line is, well, actually not just pedestrians, everybody has desire lines, but is simply the pedestrian from point A to their destination and draw a straight line, and that is their desire line. And you can see this pedestrian, well, we've got a crossing, and somebody decided to do ped fencing to get people to cross there and not use that. This pedestrian would rather walk on the road in traffic for a bit until they get to a little gap in the pedestrian fence than they would to go that extra couple of meters. You need to factor that into your auditing and thinking. Okay. I am not a fan of pedestrian fencing in many locations on our network. This is one of the big reasons why. And as an auditor, I often identify the designer or the engineer has decided to put fencing to, corral pedestrians like sheep into particular points they want to cross. There's a non-road safety dislike of that because it just horribly degrades the place value of an area. But anyway, if you just boil it back to road safety particulars, you will get people who will walk on the road trapped on the wrong side of your pedestrian fencing. And it can create safety issues. So a common phrase used in a road safety audit is, this is not on the pedestrian desire line, or pedestrian desire line is this, which is blocked and they may walk on the road. So you use that term, pedestrian desire line. And I like this one, which I saw online on LinkedIn a while back, and so I grabbed it. And And it just says it all, doesn't it? That's the desire line, and everybody's using it. Lots of examples of that. Less in New Zealand, but definitely if you go out and do auditing around the world, you'll see major new road investments just, separating communities. And they'll have, residential on one side, all the commercial activity or industrial activity on the other. And you're like, well, you're going to cross this major new motorway or highway you've put in because they need to get to the shops, get to their jobs and whatever it is. And it's hideous to see these often, World Bank or Asian Development Bank investments of, $500 million, $700 million for these new high-speed roads to boost economic productivity. And what do? They just kill hundreds of pedestrians as a result, and seriously injure huge amounts more. So getting in there and auditing and demanding those facilities is important. Okay. So here is one case study, and this is the driver's view. Okay, this is what a driver is seeing. The next photo I'm going to show you is from just behind this hazard marker. Okay. Let's go there. So that is then what the pedestrian sees. Okay. So I'll ask you, who do you think has legal priority here? Who is legally the priority road user? Yes, very good. Okay, we've got a group that knows their stuff. Emma, you're going to have to work out who said car first or vehicle first.
No worries. Ooh. Ooh.
I'll let you work that out and give the prize.
I think it might be Jeffrey.
Was it Jeffrey? Okay. Okay.
It's just I've figured it out from the username.
Oh, okay.
I've gone through at the role and looked at everyone, like to work out everyone's username.
Yeah. Okay. It's fun trying to link usernames with people. Glad you're behind the scenes doing that.
Yeah.
But this is what we're, seeing as a pedestrian. And we were out there, and this was one of the investigations we were doing after an incident. So not an audit as such, but it did not take long standing there to see, or these two, and then multiple other times where the pedestrians just walk up and sort of assume they have priority. Paving, the curb build outs, there's just these things that are just give that impression. But it's certainly not the case for the car. They don't see that impression and they don't feel that. And technically they're right. So an incident occurred where, from what we can gather from the information and the witnesses and the like, the pedestrian just walked out there and the vehicle was coming through at a little bit of speed and struck the pedestrian. And, it's kind of, we could look to blame if we want, blame the driver going a little bit faster than they probably should have. We can blame the pedestrian for not stopping, for not giving way. The reality is that the road environment somewhat has precipitated this issue. And confusion of priority is a gripe, I think, that I have and I hold and I represent in my audit findings. And it's just where it is not very clear who has priority, unless, and we've got to take our technical hats off and say, okay, well, we go, it doesn't have zebra line marking, it doesn't have the, poles, and it's, it's not, you roll straight onto it, it's car priority, but the everyday punter, doesn't look at things the way we do, so we've got to try and get in that mindset. These sort of things, again, start to get confusing. It kind of looks like pedestrian priority. It's a bit unsure. This is where you're starting to get clearer. Like you've got the same, okay, it's not pedestrian priority, or at least not for a lot of it. Road color, line mark, it's kind of clearer to see that differentiation of priority. A lot of unclear priority in different areas, and I'm just showing lots of examples here. Whose priority is this? Well, it's actually car priority again, sort of up to here, pedestrians, and then vehicles through here. That's where your taxis run out of the airport. And then you can imagine the scenarios. You long flight, you're catching up with your friend you haven't seen for years or whatever, and you're waving at them and you come out, and I just, clarifying that, just clarifying it. And courtesy crossings, I just, why? Like, okay, I do understand some of the nuances of we can't afford lighting in the area where we want to highlight it and these sort of things. I can understand that, but I'm all for clear priority. And this is not, because this is vehicle priority, but it looks kind of like pedestrian priority, and at least it's on a raised platform. That's going to help. So yeah, just clarifying that as per your standards and guidelines, the signs, the line marking, and yeah, raising it helps a lot as well. So that's much better. And a couple of little interesting fun ones, or ones that I can't believe actually ever got built, but probably tell us why there was a little bit of importance in a post-opening audit. In Australia, we use these walking leg signs for pedestrian crossings. Whoever the sign installer was thought you point those at the pedestrians so they know where to cross, not at the vehicle, so they know to stop. So that's quite amazing. But let's do a little exercise here, and you got to imagine that you're in the design phase of this curb build out and pedestrian crossing. Okay, what things do you think might present a risk that could be very easily changed in this design that would improve pedestrian safety? Don't worry about all these big line markings. They're sort of, they were trying to activate the street things. But let's have a look at yeah, so I'm liking a lot of the stuff I'm seeing coming in. I really like, I mean, a lot of people are saying raised, and I absolutely would love to raise it. It's more expensive. It comes with other challenges. Definitely, it's a wonderful thing to do. But Barry's popped in there, and I think he was the first to do it, vegetational litter boxes. That's, to me, the absolute easy win is like, why does they selected to put their vegetation and their rubbish bins, litter boxes on the approach side for a vehicle coming this way to block sight lines of kids, of smaller people, people in wheelchairs, mobility devices? Okay, why not take all of this and put it on this side, curb build out there, and you're in just a far better position. So, that is assuming there's no particular drainage constraints, which there isn't out here, or access points or the like, there's no difference at all there. You just flip that in the design phase and you've opened up sight lines. How are we going on time? Yeah, doing pretty well. This is, another incident, fatal investigation. This is a really interesting one. So the pedestrian stepped out from here, struck by a vehicle coming there, was killed. So let's have a look at the approach, the vehicle. This is what the vehicle sees. So that past photo was sort of taken just there. You can see the curb ramp just in there, and I'll go back a little bit. So it's a 70km/h road, shallow angle entry into the service road, and yeah, the pedestrian stepped out. Now, when you stand there, you've got green man, this thing's making a ticking sound, and everything's sort of drawing you to go, okay? Because it's all pedestrian priority except for this missing little gap. And yeah, without having footage of the incident or the like, I just, you know, have a suspicion that that person may have been not consciously confused, but subconsciously sort of stepped out, seen that. Anyway, they've sort of rectified it now. Yeah, visual deceit again. Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's sort of pedestrian visual deceit in this sense. And yeah, so after our report, they sort of went and rectified and added that raised crossing and slow vehicles down on the approach, provide, you know, at least priority to that point. Obviously, a much safer thing. You know, these are the kind of things we as auditors want to inject into projects before the death, and mean it doesn't happen at all. There you go. Now, interesting one. We talked a little bit about ability for, or accessibility and the like. Now, this one again, I scratched my head quite a bit at is, am I okay with this or not? It's got a curb ramp down and then the platform up. It's left the drainage channel clear. But a mobility device is really going to struggle to get through there. Yeah, it doesn't have any tactiles. This is just, well, compared to what it was, this is incredibly safer on all metrics. But it hasn't quite got us to that complete accessibility for everyone. So as a road safety auditor, and especially if I was undertaking a road safety audit in New Zealand, I would certainly comment on this. I may not risk rate this highly because a direct link to death and serious injury is pretty hard to draw that line in this particular scenario. However, I would certainly be putting this into my report because there aren't great assessment techniques for that accessibility available or integrated. So, yeah, I would say low risk, lowish risk, however, worth noting. And it's a common misunderstanding, I suppose, that I say Disability Discrimination Act, but, you know, any guidelines around accessibility or the like are what a road safety audit will cover. It's not really an auditor's role to check, you know, the handrail heights, you know, I don't know, well, no, like lifts have braille buttons. That's a bit outside of road related stuff, but like, you know, these are slightly different. We are doing a road safety audit for looking for what is going to cause death or serious injury, not is it accessible for all road users. However, the two overlap a bit, and we sort of can utilize this as a facility to inject things in as we go. Little exercise for you to do. I'm going to get you to be crash predictors, which is what road safety auditors are trying to do off a design. And I think this is a decent example because we had 6 pedestrian crashes occur in exactly the same spot, exactly the same manner, and in a, I think it's a 4-year period or a 5-year period. So, and they're serious injury, all serious injuries. So it's pretty big. And I'll give you some options on what those are. So here you go, you've got your intersection. It's a signalized intersection. That's a McDonald's, that's a shopping something. I can't remember what that is. That's like a little hotel, motel style thing. So here are the crashes that, well, I'm going to give you some options. One of these crashes that I defined was the exact one that had caused 6 serious injuries in a 5-year period. And I want you, and I think Emma's got a poll on this one, do we? Or yeah. So I'll explain it and then we'll put the poll up. People are wanting to put it in the chat, but you're going to have to do it with the poll. So what we've got is option 1, and a full solid line is the vehicle and a dotted line is the pedestrian. That's pretty much a convention on crash diagrams. So pedestrian crossing here being struck by a turning vehicle, pedestrian crossing here being struck by a turning vehicle, pedestrian crossing from the island being struck by a vehicle coming up the slip lane. 4 is similar, but on this side. 5 is a vehicle turning in over the crossover and a pedestrian walking along the footpath. So, Emma, we got a poll on this?
Sure do, Ken.
So the poll's going to pop up and you can just have your guess. Remember, you're not being marked on this. You should be able to move that poll around on your screen if you want to be able to see. But let's see how we go on crash predictors. Now, I'll just have a look in the chat, see if there's any questions that have come in.
Lots of great comments.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Luke's made a comment. So the grates or the sort of box trains. Yeah, so I've got a whole raft of slides on maintenance options for raised pedestrian crossings. And yeah, you're right. The maintenance folk don't like them because they collect leaf litter all the time. Too many ups and downs. Strips over. Yeah, should also be offset between the raised crossing and the signalized crossing due to potential pedestrians to run across. Everyone go, yeah, I agree with that. I think, Bruce, that's a pretty good audit finding, and you know, even a little bit of Danish offset Z style area in there would be a good one. Oh, okay, we've got people. Oh, yeah. People are having their votes well, and we're also getting some comments and people getting very interested in different bits and pieces. All right, let's end that poll, Emma. I'll let you end that, and let's see what the soon-to-be road safety auditors are picking. Okay, so location 1 is getting a lot of interest. 2 has got some interest. 3 has got not so much in 4. Or 5 gets a little bit. Okay, let's stop sharing that and see what we're saying. Okay, Joe, Bruce, and Lachlan not very happy with this number 2, and nor should they be. The answer is number 2. And I think that, yeah, Lachlan has sort of clarified that pretty well, as the other 2 have. This is a weird setup. We don't, if we've got a slip lane, you don't put your main road crossing at this point. This should go into that, and then they cross there, okay? And it's for exactly this reason, because I showed you it with the pedestrian that was crossing, but when you have a pedestrian crossing in the area over the slip lane, it's not great, but this is hideous. And you obviously haven't been to the site, but the phasing is also really bad, where the pedestrian gets the go ahead just as the traffic's stopped. So it gives that time for that left turner to put their foot down because their gaps just appeared. So the thing is, we as auditors have to identify this before they build it. Now that might get people quite concerned in terms of a nervous, like, well, gee, what if I miss something like this? And to that point, I say, yeah, it's important work we're doing, but you're in a team, so you'll have lots of people looking at this. And if you systematically work through this and take your time to do it, you know, you would have identified this, I think. And the way I sort of logically would do this, and admittedly, after the time I've been auditing, I do it sort of quite quickly in my head, but you know, you do it quite slowly, is I would, in my mind, drive this. So I'd be looking at the design. I would drive up here and I would say, I'm driving up here and I'm going to go right. Okay, I'm approaching. Can I see the signals? Do I have, where am I going to go? Okay, I'm going to go into a right turn lane. How long is that right turn lane? I wonder what the queuing would be. I wonder if that queued back out of there, where would I go? Would I just be stuck? Would I take some risky maneuvers? Would I go around? Okay, and then I think about that and I go, oh, maybe make a note just to check if they got any traffic modeling that I could have a look at around that. Then I go, okay, well, no, I'm going through. Is it, you know, is that a very sharp lateral shift that I've got to make to get around the right turn? And no, that looks all right. I go straight through. Is that lining up? Oh, yeah, it looks, yeah, like it lines up. That all looks pretty good. You know, am I able to see the signals? Are there mast arms? Is there lighting? Yeah, so that's the straight movement. Okay, oh, now I'm going to go right. Okay, do I get in here and I go right? I think actually I said right before, but you know, is it clear where I go? Do I have a delineation line? What if I went into this lane? You know, is there any chance that I'm going to misinterpret this at 2 in the morning when there's no traffic around and go down this carriageway? So I'm starting to, you know, think about all of that. And this is just driving from this leg and, you know, making a turn. Then I, you know, would go, okay, I know I'm doing this. Oh, is a pedestrian going to be crossing here? You know, what's the phasing of that? Are they going to have run pedestrians while I'm doing right turns? I hope not. No, they're not. That's good. And then I'm going to go, okay, right, now I want to do a left turn and I want to go left. Okay, well, I'm driving up here. And oh, am I going to turn into this service? Weird little area. Why have I got an option to go in there? What's that? Am I going to get confused by that? Have I got clear sight lines to any pedestrians that are coming up here? Yeah, no, that's good. I can see them if they were crossing. Okay. Well, I'm going to go in here now. Okay, now I'm going to look up there. Is it clear where I'm going? And oh, okay, now I'm going to, oh, hang on. Why have I got a pedestrian right in front of me? What's going on there? So that's sort of how I'd probably arrive at that. Now, don't feel bad if you didn't pick that one in the, you know, in the 30 seconds I gave you to analyze the whole intersection and do everything. Plus, I conveniently put in ones that I think present some risk. I don't like one at all, and I see a lot of you didn't like it. It hasn't happened to present death or serious injury at this stage, but it certainly might be something you'd report in your audit. Doesn't mean it's free of risk. Also, yeah, slip lane issue. Yeah, this one, keep clears, cause a bit of trouble sometimes. So, you know, I was slightly crafty in my other crashes that I put in there. But yeah, logically thinking through all of these, you know, different movements, you know, put yourself in the shoes of a pedestrian, walk all the legs, go, okay, I'm over here, I want to go to McDonald's. How do I do that? Okay, I've got a crossing point. That's good. I'm in the shopping center. I want to go to McDonald's. Where do I go? This is all muddy. I'm going to walk along the road, am I? You know, you're really just walking through all of these scenarios. A couple of quick things to finish us off with today. You know, if you've got areas that have schools, that have, rugby grounds, cricket grounds. If you can get there, well, schools particularly, if you can get there during drop-off pickup, see how it operates during those times, that's highly valuable as a road safety auditor to see that operational nuances. Sometimes it gets hard if it's a cricket ground or footy ground, and it's going to operate very differently on grand final day as it is to most of the year, so you won't be able to see that. But and then we have different things that we can recommend. There's huge amounts of stuff, and I can't go through it all. There's some bit more traffic engineering trivia. Is we have puffin crossings, which stands for pedestrian user-friendly intelligent crossings, which are like when you walk up to a house at night and the light goes on by itself. Yeah, same technology, and they just keep the lights red when there's any movement on the crossing, so anybody is slow. So there's the addition, there's the puffin component. So it's puffins, toucans. Well, toucans are two-can cross, being pedestrians and cyclists. Toucan. I'm not making these up. Like, this is like I'm sure it's some traffic engineer in the UK who invents these things and comes up with them and has a good chuckle. Toucan crossings, pelican crossings, pedestrian light controlled crossings. That's where you go. The driver sees a red light as the pedestrians are crossing, then it goes to a flashing orange or flashing amber for a while, and then it goes to a green. Humped pelican crossing, it makes perfect sense to me. I think it made world's top weirdest signs or funniest signs or something like that. Very obvious, but anyway. Pegasus crossings, technically a horse is a vehicle, so it's got some nuances in legislation around that, and obviously the height. Hey Emma, did you know that it is illegal to ride a horse when you're intoxicated, because that would be drink driving?
Or drink riding.
Yes, but it is not illegal to ride an intoxicated horse.
Oh, goodness. I think I know what the horse's beverage of choice is, though, Ken.
Oh, what's that?
Chardonnay.
We better end this session, Emma.
I think so. And it's Mate the cow's favorite drink is Merlot.
You can't ride a cow over a Pegasus crossing then.
That's true. That would probably be illegal.
Okay. I think we got to. Okay, so we got a laughing emoji. That's wonderful. I haven't told you this yet, but the 2022 release of the Austroads Guide has these things called prompt lists in them, and these are extra help because they go through a whole lot of things that we want to prompt you to think about as a road safety auditor. Pages of things to think about: drainage, sight lines, pedestrian desire lines, lighting, drainage crates. The list goes on and it's categorized. Okay, these are there to help prompt your thinking. You don't hand these in, you don't use them as a particular checklist and think you've finished everything off, but they're in there to help you. There's also a checklist in the old Waka Guide. It's not in the new one. So I'm just unsure at the moment as to whether they're going to release a new one or they're just going to direct everybody to the more updated 2022 version, which we are going to provide you anyway. Wonderful. Any final questions? Now, we don't have an assignment for you this module. You've got your research one to finish. We have a quiz for you to do. And finish off that research assignment. Don't spend your whole weekend doing it. Just get something done.
The research assignment, Ken, I believe Monday is a public holiday in New Zealand, and also Friday is a public holiday in some parts of New Zealand as well. So extra long weekend for some very lucky people. So I guess we could potentially push out the due date to Tuesday if needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. We are somewhat relaxed in that. The reality is that you won't lose any marks if it comes in on Tuesday or Wednesday for that matter, or Thursday for that matter. The thing is that you won't get a certificate of successful completion until you submitted that, and
That's right.
And got the 80% plus mark, which would pretty lenient on the marking of this one too, because it's just getting you into the swing of things.
Yeah,
and,
that's
and
right.
looking at an issue. So don't get overly stressed by that. Enjoy your super long weekend. Any other questions come in?
Yeah. No questions.
So
great, lots of great comments. Lots of great
question
comments
in there. When do we need to complete the quiz? So again, there's no particular time frame on the quiz. You just need to have completed all the quizzes before you get a certificate.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you can do them whenever you want, but I suggest you use the next 4 minutes. Should be plenty of time to knock off this quiz.
Yeah, before you lose your Wally counter. And remember all of those things.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you,
All right.
Emma. And
Thanks,
thank you for the
Ken.
wonderful input, everybody. We will see you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great long weekend, everyone. See you.